Okay, so welcome back to another episode here on Sandy Bay Media. We're joined by Nick Croyden over at Logan Lightning. They're up in Queensland in the WNPL. Make sure to give us a like and a follow. It helps the page out. So George will be joining me today. We're going to start off with a background of the club, and then we're going to get into the preview of the weekend, which George is going to take and have a bit of a chat with Nick. So Nick, just to start off with, can you introduce yourself and your role at the club?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. It's great to be talking women's football. But yeah, my name's Nick Croyden. I'm the Logan FC Technical Director for the men, the Operations Manager for the club, and the NPLW Head Coach. So it's a full-time role here at Logan FC, probably two full-time roles. But yeah, so it's something that I've enjoyed, and I've just been in the women's space for the last 2 years. But I've been at the club in a part-time role that merged into a full-time role for about 18 years now.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, I've worked at other clubs during that time. I've only been full-time with Logan FC for the last sort of 4 to 5 years now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been working full-time in the football industry for 20 years now, privately, here mainly obviously in Brisbane, and a few journeys overseas for some coaching opportunities, and then so I found myself a home here and really enjoy it.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think we got to follow that up at some stage. Just have a look at your personal journey down the line.
Yeah. So in regard to Logan FC, it's it was established back in 1979 as Logan Home Soccer Club. We, when I arrived here, there was about 100 players. That was only 18 years ago, 17 years ago, and now we have over 1,000 players.
Wow, okay.
About 8 years ago, we actually merged Logan Home FC with Beenleigh FC. Beenleigh being a very big club back 20 years ago, very proud club. Unfortunately, just due to the community area and the ageing of the area and lack of resources, Beenleigh was very financial difficulties. And we were sort of the up-and-coming club being Logan Home FC. And then we decided to merge to get ourselves into what we call the BPL and the BWPL, which is the tier down from the NPL categories. That was about 10 years ago. So that allowed us to enter into that competition. We were highly successful in both the male and the female competitions there. And it sort of went from strength to strength. We obviously only entered the NPLW 3 years ago. In 2018, it was hard going. We didn't even have enough girls that turned up for the trials for the juniors. They finished the regular season 12th out of 13 in 13s, 15s and 17s at the time. And then halfway through that, 2/3 into the first season, I took over the women's side there as well. And they were sitting joint last with a now folded club called Mudgeeraba. So, it's been a long journey for that women's program, but we've got over 200 players in 2020 that are female registered players here at the club, from under sixes through to the seniors. We have 2 social women's senior sides. Then obviously our NPL program, our SAP program, and then 3 other junior, what we call divisional sides here in Queensland that underpin that NPL program. So, the history of the club obviously goes back a way. It was very much a community-based club for many years, and we've sort of gone into that NPL space for the men and the women over the last 3 to 5 years, and are progressing quite well. So,
Brilliant. And I know you just mentioned the men's side. Can you just give us an overview of the structure of the club in terms of
overview of the structure of the club? We have the NPL and the SAP in the men's and the women's, and we have like our community divisional competition, and then we have our in-house competitions from 6 to 8. We run out of 2 venues. Being so big, we run out of the what we call Chris Green Park, the old Beenleigh FC, and then Cornubia Park, which is the old Logan Home FC.
That's fantastic.
So it's overseen by myself, and we have a women's TD, Jimmy Hodgson. We have a SAP TD, James Coots, formerly from North Geelong, I think, last year. And Rick Coughlin, who's our head men's coach, and also my partner in crime in the technical department, who has come up from Devonport Strikers in the men's space. So we have quite a good technical department here. Those 3 gentlemen are all part-timers, but, are putting in pretty much full-time hours in the most times, as you do at most clubs, and the rest of the club's pretty much volunteers beyond that. And probably the success of the club is that volunteer, that volunteer base. We've got some really great people in great roles who just love the club, and any club wanting to aspire to just be either successful in their own community or successful in those higher leagues, you need that volunteer base and that dedicated volunteer base. And I think the structure of the club, how the technical department runs technical, and the community and the committee run the community side of the club and the operations side of the club, is the reason behind our success. And I really give the board their credit in allowing us to do our jobs. We're well resourced, but also the decisions stop with me when it comes to football. So that allows us to bring in good people and allows us to do our jobs without anything tied around our back. And I've seen plenty of good coaches fail because they've gone to the wrong club and not been able to do what they want to do just because people get involved in decisions. And it's certainly the success of this club, because we've never had that in my time at the club. And that really helps with our structure and how we go about things.
Yeah, it definitely makes things easier.
Yeah, like any connections, like we've got connections with schools here that really support our program, which has helped us improve our programs. And I was able to select those schools myself because I wanted to target football schools. Helensvale, Marsden, Maple Park. There's schools in our area that have good programs, that have good teachers, that are actually football coaches, not just teachers. So little things like that, being able to do those things, able to attract in sponsors, really help every department, because like anything, it evolves around money.
Exactly.
And when you have things that you can save money on through having good sponsors and good networks, it makes the machine work a lot better as well.
It does, doesn't it? I know you just mentioned a lot of different things that the club's done, both on and off the field, but is there one achievement that you're proud of, or that the club is proud of and that wants to highlight?
It's probably some of the community things we do. We have a lot of we have a tough area here, and Logan can be known for a rough area or a low income area, and in some areas it is, and it brings up its challenges. But to be fair, depends which side of the highway you're on. And you probably come across this in Melbourne, but within 20 k's you've got millionaires and you've got guys that can't afford to buy boots. It has a very big challenge here, and to try and accommodate. And obviously they're all skillful, they're all talented. So where do you draw the line? And especially with fees, even at community levels, are too high, in my opinion. And I'm sure we can all agree on that. We don't want to stop people from participating. So probably our greatest achievement is that inclusiveness. We've found ways through government grants, through funding, through boot drives. And I would openly say we'd have the most scholarships in Queensland given to, and it's not just at NPL level. This is community sport. This is under sixes. It's not just for good players. It is for players that probably wouldn't play the game unless we could give them a pair of boots and a uniform and pay their fees. We've got a network of transport where support systems from parents that help bring players to training, to games. Once again, not just for NPL, for all members of the club. And that's something I'm really proud of personally, that we get access to be able to do this. And this comes from, working with the schools and really knowing that who generally needs that assistance. Speaking to our state member, speaking to our federal member, speaking to our mayor and saying, hey man, I need some money. These kids won't play. And they do. And it's, whether it's male or female, I can never thank the local governments enough, because they do understand the area. The dynamic of it is quite difficult. And it's certainly something that can help me sleep better at night anyway.
I think so, yeah. And it's, like I'm saying, it's just amazing to hear that sort of community engagement and inclusion that the club has.
It's a very multicultural area. There's multiple languages spoken in the area. There's multiple religious beliefs in the area as well. So it's definitely a unique setup, and it can be testing at times. And we even allow community groups to use our facility that may not actually play in a registered competition. We have certain groups from certain backgrounds that may not be able to or can commit or have that, but they might come use our field on a Sunday free of charge and keep their community together. And that's something where we can, when our fields aren't being used, as long as they follow our rules, which we do, we give them access to the fields as well, and help out these community groups to just stay part of their community and be active and be healthy, and not just in the physical space, but the mental space as well. I feel for some of you people down in Melbourne locked away at the moment, needing the sunlight.
Yes. I think we could have a full episode just looking at the achievements and things that Logan has done. I think we'll save that for another time around.
Yeah.
But we're going to head over to George for his questions. He's got a few that he wants to ask you.
Morning, Nick. How are you?
Good, George. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. Thanks for taking time out of, I guess, a busy day to join us. Interesting journey, the whole club. I wasn't aware of how much Logan has developed as a club since you've been there. So that was really interesting to hear. Just going to follow up a little bit quickly on on a bit of Rohit's work there was, in regards to the club, what are your longer term plans down at Logan in regards to your player development? Obviously this season's WNPL side has many top players and some really, really quality visa players. What do you guys have in place for the nurturement of your young girls? Because I think that's something that I think your men's side's probably benefits from. It's done really well in that sense, bringing up youth players through to the first team. Do you have something in place for the same thing with the women?
Yeah, definitely. Just probably to relate to the men just quickly is when I was the men's coach, we put things in place and we had to sort of rely a lot on visas. Back then there was no limit because we didn't have our own junior base. But once we started having our own junior base and producing our own players, it became just a great era. We stopped really getting visa players in. We just played our own young kids. And it's a similar setup here. We sort of, like I alluded to in the previous chat, 2 years ago, we didn't have our own juniors really in the women's space. To rewind back a little bit again there, we missed out on a licence about 6-7 years ago, and we actually were very strong in the girls, and the whole club left and went to South. So then we had nothing. We went from being probably the strongest, if not top 3, to not having a licence, to then losing all those players. So then when we got the licence, 2.5 years ago, we had to start again. So the first year was quite poor. If you turned up, you got in, which is not elite level football in anyone's opinion. So then we had to rethink, how do we go about this? So we went all the way to the bottom. We started under 6, under 8, all girls development teams, which underpin the SAP program. We then made sure every coach, whether they were working in every space, had a minimum C licence. And then we started running free all girls clinics. And then we started adding some mentorships as well. Some of the senior players working with some of the 18s and 15s. And then what we also included was every junior team had to have a senior player, either as a head coach or an assistant coach. So this allowed us to then integrate coaching and playing. And this also helped that connection between the seniors and juniors. And then for me, it had that total community feel. So, 2.5 years on, we've achieved those goals. It's laid a nice little foundation. So now we're starting to produce some of our own players, what I'd feel would be our own players. We're still a few years away from having that total, conveyor belt or that streamlined approach. But, for instance, I'll use an example. I've got one of the girls in the under 15s who's already played 2 games off the bench for the top side. She trains with us 2 nights a week, one night with the 15s, and goes back and keeps that social connection with girls her age, which I think is really important, because bringing a 15-year-old into a very big senior setup with a lot of professional WD players can be intimidating. So I spoke to FQ about her mixing between the both, and she's quite dominant in her age group, but socially still not an adult and needs that time to adjust. So we put in a mentorship there with another player. Actually, Shay Connor's taking her under her wing, and I do some extra work with her, just trying to bring her through, just as an example. And she's someone that, I've then run the QAS about, said, hey, you need to keep an eye on this girl. She's fantastic. So it's not about just producing them for us. It's about producing them for the Matildas as well. And this girl may or may not have that potential, but we're certainly going to put people around her to give her every opportunity. So the development approach is there. We're still a couple of years away from really producing our own and really saying, hey, we're doing a good job here. But we've got the senior set up for something for them to aspire to now. Because I think without a good senior setup, the juniors sort of look up and go, hey, I'm going to move on when I'm 17 because these girls aren't where I need to be. But now that we've got that professional environment at the top tier and put the underpinning things even at the under 6 level, it's starting to connect in the middle, and that should then allow us to produce our own players.
Brilliant.